You've probably felt it before, that strange, painful contradiction that makes absolutely no sense. You treat her with respect. You listen to her stories. You give her your time, your attention, maybe even your heart. And yet somehow, she seems more fascinated by the man who barely notices her. The man who replies late. The man who seems distant. The man who acts like losing her wouldn't change his life at all. And you sit there wondering, why does it feel like the more you value a woman, the less she values you? It's a question that confuses millions of men. It feels unfair, illogical, even cruel. But what if I told you, there's a deeper psychological reason behind this pattern? A reason hidden inside human nature itself. Welcome to Female Code Unlocked, where we explore the hidden psychology behind attraction, relationships, and the emotional signals most people never notice. If you want to understand the unspoken dynamics between men and women and learn the truths most people are too afraid to say, make sure you subscribe and join us on this journey. Because today, you're about to see a reality that may completely change the way you look at attraction. Imagine this scene for a moment. You meet a woman. She's charming, beautiful, magnetic in the way she laughs and looks at the world. And naturally, you want to show her that you appreciate her. So you compliment her. You make yourself available. You text her first. You make sure she feels valued. From your perspective, this seems like the right thing to do. But something strange begins to happen. At first, she responds warmly. But slowly, her energy shifts. Her replies get shorter. Her excitement fades. Her attention drifts somewhere else. And then suddenly, you notice something shocking. She becomes obsessed with another guy. A guy who doesn't text back quickly. A guy who doesn't constantly reassure her. A guy who seems almost emotionally unavailable. And that's the moment where frustration creeps in. You ask yourself, why does she chase the man who barely values her instead of the one who treats her well? The answer lies in something most people never talk about: scarcity. Human psychology is wired in a strange way. We are naturally drawn toward things that feel difficult to obtain. Not because we enjoy suffering, but because our minds associate rarity with value. Think about diamonds. They're not valuable because they're useful. They're valuable because they're rare. Now apply that same psychological principle to attraction. When a man constantly shows how much he values a woman, his attention becomes predictable, safe, available. And ironically, predictable things rarely trigger emotional excitement. But when a man appears emotionally independent, when his attention isn't guaranteed, something powerful happens inside her mind. Curiosity begins to grow. Her brain starts asking silent questions. Why isn't he chasing me like everyone else? What makes him different? What does he see that others don't? And suddenly, the dynamic flips. Instead of you trying to earn her attention, she begins trying to earn yours. This isn't about cruelty. It's about emotional tension. Attraction, at its core, thrives on a delicate balance between connection and mystery. Too much certainty, and the emotional spark fades. But uncertainty? Uncertainty creates intrigue. It keeps the mind engaged. It makes the heart beat a little faster. That's why the man who seems slightly distant often becomes the one she thinks about the most. Not because he treats her badly, but because he signals something deeper. Independence. A life that doesn't revolve around her. A quiet message that says, I value you, but I don't need you to feel complete. And strangely enough, that emotional independence is often what women interpret as strength. But there's another psychological layer beneath this. A darker one. Because sometimes, women don't chase the man who values them less. They chase the man who makes them feel something unpredictable. And the human brain is addicted to emotional highs and lows. That's why calm affection sometimes feels less intense than uncertain desire. But here's the dangerous part most men misunderstand. The goal isn't to become cold, distant, or manipulative. Because the moment you fake indifference, it loses its power. Real attraction doesn't come from pretending not to care. It comes from genuinely having a life so full, so meaningful, that your happiness doesn't depend on someone else's attention. And when a woman senses that quiet confidence, something shifts. But this is where the psychology gets even deeper and far more surprising. Because there's a hidden emotional trigger that makes women chase certain men, even when they know those men aren't good for them. And once you understand this mechanism, you'll start seeing it everywhere. Because the truth is, attraction is rarely logical. It's emotional, instinctive, sometimes even irrational. And one of the most powerful emotional triggers inside the human mind is uncertainty. You see, when someone values you too easily, your brain quickly categorizes them as safe and predictable. There's no mystery left to solve, no emotional tension pulling your curiosity deeper. But when someone's attention feels slightly out of reach, something very different happens inside the mind. Your thoughts begin to circle around them. You start analyzing every word they say, every glance, every message. Did they mean something by that pause? Why did they smile like that? Why do they sometimes seem close and other times distant? Without realizing it, your brain starts investing energy trying to decode them. And the more mental energy you invest into someone, the more emotionally attached you begin to feel. This is one of the quiet secrets behind why some women become fascinated by men who don't seem overly invested. Those men create emotional space. Not intentionally, not manipulatively, but naturally. Their lives are full. They have ambitions, passions, goals, and purpose that exist outside of romantic validation. They're not constantly checking their phone hoping for a reply. They're not waiting around for someone's approval. And women can feel that energy immediately. It's subtle, but powerful. Because when a man doesn't appear desperate for attention, he communicates something without ever saying it out loud. My life is already meaningful. And that message carries enormous psychological weight. Now compare that to the opposite scenario. A man who constantly seeks reassurance. A man who sends long paragraphs when she hasn't replied. A man who rearranges his entire schedule just to see her. A man who silently communicates. My happiness depends on whether you choose me. At first, she may feel flattered. But over time, something shifts. Because dependence creates pressure. And pressure slowly erodes attraction. What once felt romantic begins to feel heavy. Suddenly she senses that if she pulls away, his entire emotional world might collapse. And no one wants to carry that responsibility. So her instincts begin searching for something lighter, something freer. And that's often when the man who seems emotionally independent becomes far more intriguing. Not because he's cruel, but because he doesn't place his emotional weight on her shoulders. This doesn't mean women consciously choose men who don't value them. In fact, most women genuinely want affection, care, and emotional connection. But the way that affection is delivered makes all the difference. When appreciation turns into overinvestment, it loses its impact. It stops feeling special and starts feeling expected. Imagine someone giving you compliments every single minute of the day. At first, it feels wonderful. But eventually, your brain stops reacting. The words lose their meaning, because value only exists when something feels earned. And this is where many men unknowingly sabotage their own attraction. They believe that giving more attention will increase a woman's feelings. But emotional attraction doesn't grow through constant availability. It grows through emotional contrast, moments of closeness, followed by space. Interest, balanced with independence. This rhythm creates something incredibly powerful. Anticipation. When someone isn't always present, their presence suddenly becomes meaningful again. Their messages feel exciting. Their attention feels rewarding. And their time feels valuable. That emotional rhythm is what keeps attraction alive. But when a man gives unlimited access to his time, energy, and validation, the emotional tension disappears. And without tension, the spark fades. But there's another truth that goes even deeper than this. Something most people are uncomfortable admitting. Because sometimes, women aren't just chasing independence. Sometimes they're chasing emotional challenge. And that challenge activates a psychological mechanism that can turn simple attraction into obsession. Once you understand this mechanism, you'll start recognizing why certain men seem to pull women in effortlessly, while others keep getting overlooked. And it has nothing to do with looks, money, or status. It's something far more subtle. There's a moment in almost every attraction story that people rarely talk about, A moment where curiosity quietly turns into emotional investment. And strangely, it often begins with challenge. Not the kind of challenge that feels aggressive or arrogant, but the kind that makes someone feel like they haven't completely figured you out yet. Because the human mind is naturally drawn toward puzzles. Think about the last time something truly captured your attention. It probably wasn't something simple and predictable. It was something layered, mysterious, something that made your mind return to it again and again. Attraction works in a very similar way. When a man constantly tries to prove his value to a woman, he unknowingly removes that puzzle. Everything about him becomes easy to read. His intentions, obvious. His emotions, transparent. His attention, guaranteed. And while honesty and openness are important for healthy relationships, early attraction often thrives on something slightly different. Intrigue. That subtle feeling that there's more beneath the surface. This is why some men who seem quiet, calm, and emotionally self-contained can attract enormous attention without even trying. They don't rush to explain themselves. They don't chase approval. They don't constantly perform for validation. Instead, they simply exist in their own world. And that creates a powerful psychological question inside a woman's mind. Who is he really? When that question appears, curiosity begins its work. She watches you more closely. She notices your reactions. She listens more carefully to the things you say. And without realizing it, she begins investing emotional energy into understanding you. This is one of the hidden forces behind attraction. The more someone mentally invests in figuring you out, the more attached they begin to feel. Because the brain dislikes unfinished stories. It wants resolution. It wants to understand. And sometimes, the man who reveals everything too quickly unintentionally removes that emotional journey. But the man who allows things to unfold slowly creates a narrative that keeps growing in her mind. Now here's where the psychology gets darker. Some women are not just drawn to challenge. They are drawn to emotional unpredictability. Not because they consciously enjoy chaos, but because unpredictable emotional experiences create stronger neurological responses. When emotions rise and fall unpredictably, the brain releases powerful chemicals like dopamine. These chemicals amplify feelings of excitement and anticipation. It's the same reason people become addicted to unpredictable rewards, like gambling or social media notifications. Your brain starts craving the next emotional spike. And sometimes, the man who doesn't provide constant reassurance becomes the source of that emotional roller coaster. One day he's warm and charming. Another day he seems distant and focused on his own world. This emotional contrast can create intense psychological engagement. But here's the crucial truth most people misunderstand. You should never intentionally manipulate someone's emotions to create this effect. Because manipulation always destroys trust in the long run. The real power lies somewhere else entirely. It lies in genuine self-respect. When you truly value your own time, goals, and emotional well-being, you naturally stop overinvesting in people who haven't earned that level of access yet. You stop chasing. You stop trying to convince someone to choose you. And that quiet shift changes everything. Because now your attention becomes selective. Your presence becomes meaningful. And your approval becomes something that must be earned, not automatically given away. This is the energy that creates real attraction. Not arrogance, not cruelty, but calm, grounded self-worth. And when a woman senses that you respect yourself deeply, something fascinating happens. She begins wondering whether she meets your standards. And that question alone can completely reverse the dynamic. But there's still one final psychological truth behind this pattern that most men never realize. It's the reason some women lose interest the moment a man becomes too available. And why certain men seem to hold a woman's fascination for years without even trying. Once you see this final piece of the puzzle, you'll never look at attraction the same way again. There's one final truth about attraction that changes everything once you truly understand it. And it's this. People don't chase what is offered freely. They chase what feels valuable. Not valuable because someone says it is, but valuable because it behaves like it is. Think about the men who seem to effortlessly attract attention wherever they go. The ones women seem curious about, drawn toward, even when those men aren't trying. It's rarely because they're the loudest person in the room. And it's not always because they're the most handsome. More often, it's because of something far quieter. They move through life with a sense of internal certainty. They don't rush to prove themselves. They don't bend their identity just to impress someone. And they don't panic when someone pulls away. Because their self-worth doesn't depend on a woman choosing them. And that single difference sends a powerful signal. It tells the world, and the women around them, that their life is already full. Now imagine the opposite situation. A man meets a woman and immediately begins pouring his entire emotional energy into her. He texts constantly. He rearranges his schedule to match hers. He tries to impress her with endless compliments and validation. From his perspective, he's showing affection. But from a psychological perspective, something else is happening. He's communicating that she has already won his approval, even before she's invested anything in return. And when approval comes too easily, it loses its power. This doesn't mean women want men who treat them badly. That's one of the biggest misunderstandings in modern dating. Women don't crave disrespect. What they crave is emotional polarity. They want to feel that the man they're interested in has his own direction, his own standards, his own life that continues moving forward regardless of who enters it. That sense of grounded independence creates a feeling of safety and excitement at the same time. Safety, because he seems emotionally stable. Excitement, because his attention isn't something everyone receives. When you stop chasing validation, your presence becomes more meaningful. When you stop trying to impress everyone, the right people become naturally curious about you. And when you stop placing someone on a pedestal, something fascinating happens. They step down. And suddenly the connection becomes balanced. This is why women often seem drawn toward men who appear slightly detached from the outcome. Not because those men don't care, but because their emotional stability makes them rare. And rarity is magnetic. The truth is, the moment you stop trying to convince someone to see your value becomes easier to see. Because confidence is not loud. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It simply exists, calmly, quietly, without needing constant recognition. And that energy changes how people respond to you, especially women. But here's the most important thing to remember. This isn't about playing games. It's not about pretending to care less. It's about building a life where your sense of purpose, growth, and happiness exists independently of anyone's approval. When you live like that, you stop needing to be chosen. And strangely enough, that's when people start choosing you. If this opened your eyes to a deeper side of female psychology, make sure you subscribe to Female Code Unlocked for more insights that most people never talk about. And tell me in the comments, have you ever noticed this pattern in real life? Because once you understand the psychology behind attraction, you begin to see it everywhere.